Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You can see me?
Yes.
Folks, make sure your cell phones are completely silenced and turned off, please.
We're here on the record on three cases. Case 684-127, 681-665, and 668-827. All of these are State of Ohio versus Khaleel Johnson. The first two cases that the court called are for sentencing. The 668-827 is a probation violation matter that must also be handled today as well. As to this earlier case number, Mr. Schleich 668-827, who is appointed on this matter. Mr. Schleich, do you wish, when you're being heard in mitigation for the other two cases, to be heard on this PV case? In other words, will your client be making an admission to this, or would you like to be heard in mitigation all at one time?
Yes, Your Honor, we will waive probable cause, admit that he is a technical probation violator due to the fact that he was pled guilty subsequently to other cases. So I would reserve my mitigatory remarks at the time of sentencing.
All right. And Mr. Schleich, have you received the pre-sentence investigation report that was ordered by the court at your request?
Thanks to your wonderful staff, Your Honor, I have had an opportunity to review the pre-sentence investigation report. I had no additions or deletions and believe the report to be factually accurate.
And yourself, Mr. Brennan, for the State of Ohio, any changes that need to be made to the pre-sentence investigation report?
No, Your Honor.
And there's someone at the table with you.
There is, Your Honor.
Would you please introduce him?
Seated with me is Andre Martin from the County Prosecutor's Office. He is our witness and victim advocate, and for seating purposes, he is seated with me at the table. That's okay with the court.
It is.
Thank you.
Good morning. And good morning to everyone. Right, the court has reviewed the pre-sentence investigation report as well. All right, Mr. Bringman, would you like to address the court as to the sentencing?
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, starting in case number 681-665, on a prior day, Mr. Johnson, as this court is aware, entered pleas of guilty to 2 counts of aggravated vehicular homicide. Your Honor, these charges and the pleas on this case stem from the defense actions on May 27th of this past year, 2023, when beginning in Cleveland Heights, Mr. Johnson was driving and operating a stolen Dodge Charger. This vehicle, this Dodge Charger, was stolen by Mr. Johnson 2 days before at a dealership, a classic dealership in Menor, Ohio. They reported that stolen on the morning of the 26th when they reviewed video footage showing a vehicle from a distance, but you can see individuals approaching the Dodge Charger in question. They arrive within seconds. They're into the car and out of the parking lot. During a subsequent investigation into this case, detectives from University Heights obtained cell records for Mr. Johnson, and those records include GPS coordinates for the time of not only the date of the accident, but also the time, the date of the stolen car. From there, his phone puts him in that area at that same time. Now, in the early afternoon of the 27th, Mr. Johnson still operating his car. He arrives at his then friend's house, Marlon Emory, on Williams Road in South Euclid, in that vehicle. operating that car. He picks Mr. Emory up, and he continues driving that vehicle later that evening or that afternoon into Cleveland Heights. The manner in which he is driving, which at that time is reckless, it's erratic, it's well above the posted speed limit. It catches the eye of a detective, or excuse me, an officer from Cleveland Heights, Officer Williams, who observes them traveling at such a high rate of speed that he is unable to officially pursue them. He does view them crossing or traveling down Cedar Road out of Cleveland Heights into University Heights. He is approximately 2 blocks behind them. His lights are not activated at the time. And within a second or seconds, he loses sight of them. Seconds after that, Your Honor, Officer Williams, as well as other individuals in that vicinity, hear an explosion. And what happens, and part of this is caught on a nearby Ring camera, is that the defendant who's driving this Dodge Charger runs an intersection at approximately, we believe, 115 miles an hour on Cedar Road in University Heights, this is the residential area of Cedar Road, which is a posted speed limit of 35 miles an hour, where he runs head-on into John Nelson, Mr. Nelson, who is making a left-hand turn from Cedar, I believe, onto Brockway. A legal, lawful left-hand turn. That collision, Your Honor, is at such a high rate of speed that it causes both cars to travel, Mr. Nelson's car, to travel back approximately 118 feet, the length of about 3 front yards from the intersection of Brockway, I believe traveling, it would be north at Cedar. Immediately, the car is engulfed in flames. This Officer Williams from Cleveland Heights.
He was going north on Brockway to the left, and he's
I turned
going.
around a little bit, but
He was going towards the city of Cleveland.
I believe so. I believe that the point I'm trying to make is that Mr. Nelson's car was dragged 118 feet going the opposite direction of the way he was traveling.
Understood.
So both cars are immediately engulfed by flames. Mr. Nelson, as well as Mr. Johnson's passenger seated in the front passenger seat, Mr. Emory, immediately succumbed to their injuries. During the investigation and a review of the autopsies, both Mr. Emory and Mr. Nelson died from blunt force impact. And that is, I mentioned that, Your Honor, because I believe it's important to shine light on the defendant's actions that day and his statements and his immediate attempt to blame Mr. Emory or remove himself from the situation. Because who responds on scene is Cleveland Heights, University Heights, as well as a task force called EDGE. And what EDGE is, it's an accident reconstruction task force that involves several different detectives from nearby communities. And Cleveland Heights, University Heights, South Euclid all designate 1 or 2 detectives who are experts in accident reconstruction. So they immediately arrive on scene, they take measurements, they take photographs, but during the investigation they also review some of the autopsies and they generate an expert report. And one of the most important tools that they use are what we maybe refer to as the black boxes of the car. They are these crash data event recorders. And what both of those were able to be obtained from Mr. Nelson's vehicle as well as the Dodge Charger. And that is how they determined that at the time, the last 5 seconds of Mr. Johnson while he was driving before impact, that they are able to take that data and determine he was traveling 115 miles an hour at 5 seconds before impact. And at 1.1 seconds before impact is when he engages the brake. at 10%, causing him to reduce that speed from 115 to anywhere, they believe, between 102 and 98 miles an hour in impact, which causes, Your Honor, both Mr. Emory and Mr. Nelson to die by impact, not by the ensuing fire. That black box also included information as to seatbelts. And what it showed is that the driver of the Charger, Mr. Johnson, was wearing a seatbelt. That is why he survived. Mr. Emory, and seated in the front passenger, was not, which is why it's important to note that the cause of death was not from fire, but it was from impact, showing that Mr. Johnson was, without a doubt, the driver of that vehicle. Mr. Johnson is immediately within seconds able to crawl out of a window, where he is rescued by people who are coming out of their houses. Other drivers pull him from the flames. And before he's even safe, he is telling them that I was just walking down the street, while one of his best friends is trapped inside that car. He is already focused on himself. Your Honor, that story he stuck with at scene, that changed over time to when he is being treated at the hospital, that he was not the driver. Another reason we're here, Your Honor, is his companion case. In this case, it's unrelated, but it is, I think, important when talking about Mr. Johnson and his relationship to being the driver, his responsibility. Is not only was he on probation this court at the time, but this incident happened, like I said, on May 27th. On March 1st of that year is when he arrived during closing hours at a dealership on the west side, Serpentini Chevrolet. This is the basis for his plea and charges in his companion case this morning, where he again attempts to steal another Dodge Charger. Security footage from that case, I believe, shows that somebody had attempted to and moved it from the lot. When they arrived, Mr. Johnson was unable to drive the car off the lot, but had broken the window. His prints were found on the vehicle. That is how he was able to be identified. Your Honor, the detail that I've gone into here, the lengths that University Heights went in investigating this incident, I believe are indicative of the seriousness of his actions. The harm in this case, as you will hear from the friends and family of the victims who are here today, who have been harmed, devastated beyond what I can tell you. I believe you will hear from them. But the harm is so great in this case. The way that this offense was carried out, this was, I believe, one of the worst forms of this offense, and I believe that it warrants consecutive sentences, which is what we'll be asking for in this case, Your Honor. There were 2 lives who were taken away by Mr. Johnson's conduct, his driving, and his decisions that day. And we're asking that this court impose a sentence that adequately punishes him for his conduct that day. Now, present today and wishing to speak and address the court are members of both Mr. Nelson's family, Mr. Nelson's family, as well as Mr. Emory's family. And Your Honor, at this time, I would, with the court's permission, recognize Ms. Brewer, who is Marlon's mother. She is today joined by Marlon's twin brother, Marcellus, and his father, Nathaniel, who I believe all wish to make statements for the court.
Thank you, Mr. Brinkman. Ms. Brewer, is it?
Yes.
And what's your first name?
Shara, Shara. My last name is Brewer, Brewer.
And what would you like to say?
I actually wrote out something that I wanted to say. I didn't get a chance to get it to you in enough time, but I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. I didn't have it in order, I'm sorry.
Take your time. Well, since I don't have it in order, Your Honor, I'm sorry. I did have it in order when I wrote it, but Would you like me to take a look at what you have first?
Yes.
Before you begin?
that's the first one, yeah.
I'd like you to come up here. You can come on up. Put this over here on the right, on the left. Okay? You're welcome. Keep going. All right. Now, there's nothing more important to the court than hearing from everybody. Okay? So come down here. You can see these? Okay. You see that's the first page? Okay. And then does it end with a period? Okay. Now, is this the second page? Okay. And then you see how that doesn't end? But look at the last words. And then would this be the third page? Take your time. Don't go to the next page until you're sure. These are your choices. Why don't you do that? In the meantime, Mr. Brandon, do you wish somebody else to speak
Sure.
first? She may sit down at the table. Mr. Brigham, she may sit down at the table.
Okay.
Good
Yes,
morning.
sir. What's your name?
Nathaniel Emory. Speak up. Nathaniel Emory.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Emery.
Good morning.
What would you like to say to the court?
Nathaniel
Okay.
Yeah, you know, I'd just like to say, it's everything that happened was unfortunate, but you know, I'm just gonna get to the point. My son got a birthday on December 2nd, next month. He won't be here. This guy here, Khaleel, however much time he get, he gonna come home again. And the only thing I want, however you sentence this, I want him to do his time. I mean, I don't want both families to get ran together. However you sentence, I want it to be separate. Because I know how the system is. Like, wait, you can easily run them both together and he do one time. At least let us get however much time we get today. Let us get our time by ourselves, and the Nelson family get their time by ourselves. And that's all I really want to say.
Understood, sir. Thank you, Mr. Emery.
All right.
Judge, you want his brother? He's in
That's
the
fine.
He's in a
Thank you.
wheelchair, so I have to get him on.
Keep the podium there.
Okay.
A little more. Thank you, sir. You're welcome. Good morning, sir. Could you please tell me your name?
Marcellus Emory,
How old are you, Marcellus?
20.
Was this your brother?
Yeah, 20.
Twin brother? What would you like to say, sir?
16. Yes. Judge, I feel like you need to give him a maximum sentence as you can, because not only did he steal that black Hellcat, but he stole another Hellcat, which was a yellow and black Charger. Khaleel knows I'm not lying either, because I remember my brother used to come home and tell me about it. but that's beside the point. I just have to throw that out there. Like, and you see what I'm going through and how my life has changed just from not putting on a seatbelt. So now I'm paralyzed from the chest down with no movement or sensation. My accident and his accident is literally the same. I was the backseat passenger and Marlon was the front seat passenger. We was in my accident, we was in a high speed chase. Wake up. Swipe up. We was in a high speed chase. And y'all's accident was almost the same. We crashed at an intersection, and so did y'all. 2 people died in my accident, well, almost 3, since I had to get brought back to life from having a fractured right forehead and a broken neck with 2 collapsed lungs. But 2 people died from both of our accidents. Every day I wish both me and my brother should have put on our seatbelts. But when your adrenaline is rushing and everything is calm at the moment and you are nervously excited, you just don't think nothing bad is going to happen. So now I'm paralyzed for the rest of my life and my twin is gone. So judge, please give him maximum sentence. Swipe up. A maximum sentence. He knew exactly what he was doing all along. He wasn't sorry when he was stealing the other. Well, no, he wasn't sorry when he was stealing those cars. He wasn't sorry when my brother and the other guy died, who was just bringing some food to his mother, but she never got the chance to. He's only thinking for Khaleel is only thinking for himself, which is selfish. But Judge already hope you don't give him a slap on the wrist, on the wrist amount of years when he deserves maximum. Yeah, that's it.
When was your accident?
New Year's Day of 2021.
All right. Thank you for speaking today. Yes, Ms. Brewer, are you ready now?
Yes, I apologize.
No problems. Please tell the court what you wanted to say.
Okay. Your Honor, I wanted to address the court today in regards to my son, Marlon Emory. Marlon was the eldest of my twin boys, born on December 2nd, 2002. Marlon was a humble, peaceful, loving young man, and his life was snuffed away at just 20 years old by the defendant. On May 25th, I decided to take a trip for the Memorial Day holiday weekend with some friends Marlon walked my luggage to the car. I told him I loved him, and I told him to make sure he locked the door if he leaves. He said, "I doubt it, Ma. I'm tired from work. I'm going to bed." Then he said, "I love you too." He went in the house and closed the door, and I didn't see my son anymore. Thursday, May 25th, he was alive. Then Saturday, May 27th, he was gone. I will never forget the call I got from his twin brother Marcellus saying, "Ma, I think something bad happened to Marlon." I said, "Wait, what are you talking about?" He said, "Marlon never turns off his location to me. And his location is stating that he's in University Heights and his phone is going straight to voicemail." I had to get up and go to the other room so I could hear him clearly. And he was crying, saying his friends were FaceTiming him left and right, saying Marlon was in a bad accident. I fell to the floor immediately and started crying out to God. Saying, "Lord, please don't let this be so." I said, "Marcellus, I will call you back. I have to call the police department to verify." I called the dispatcher. The dispatcher transferred me to the detective, and I said, "Please tell me my son is okay. Please tell me." He said, "Unfortunately, Marlon was one of the guys in this car that didn't make it." I screamed and threw my phone across the room. At that moment, my heart stopped beating, and I gasped for air. I couldn't believe that this happened to my son just 2 years after a loss from his twin brother Marcellus, dealing with a devastating car accident that caused him to have paralysis in both his arms and legs. How could this be? Why my sons? I thought, why? My sons were not the drivers of these cars. Their so-called friends were. They caused this devastation to their lives and them. I thought, I don't have the type of sons that was out there robbing people and stealing cars. Both of my sons were working with good jobs and trying to earn a living the right way, as I taught them. Moving forward, my friends that I was out of town with started seeing these videos of this car accident and how fast this car was going. Coming up Lee Road, then Cedar, everyone's Ring cameras picked up the footage, and they all watched in disbelief. Nobody could believe their eyes. Why in the world is this car driving fast on a hot summer day on the city streets in traffic, ongoing and coming? It made no sense whatsoever. Nobody was chasing him. Not one police jurisdiction. So why? Why play this taunting game, taking off at high speeds every time he sees a police car, as to say, they can't catch me, so watch this, Marlon. But I can hear my son saying, "Chill. Let me out the car. I know Marlon." And that's exactly what he was probably saying. I can hear his screams over and over, begging him to slow down or stop. He knows what his twin brother went through. He would not have wanted to partake in this nonsense. He cared about his city job too much, and he wanted to get his car fixed. He had bills he wanted to pay. He liked to keep his own money that he earned and worked hard for. He just knew that he was going to make it home that day. I know this because when I got home and finally had the strength to go to my basement to wash clothes, after a few weeks, there was Marlon's neon yellow work uniform still sitting in the washing machine, smelling like mildew, but waiting for him to return home to put them in the dryer so he could go to work on Monday morning. Your Honor, my friends and family worked so effortlessly to find me a flight home. On the first flight, leaving out at 6 a.m. They drove me to the airport, and I had a layover in one of the biggest airports in the world, Atlanta. I had to walk from terminal to terminal by myself, crying my eyes out as I longed to be home or to have been with my son sooner. That walk through that airport was pure torture. I felt as though I was walking carrying a ton of bricks. That feeling that I had was unbearable. It was the worst trip back home and the second worst experience of my life. All the grief that I still feel, after partially losing my son Marcellus to his accident that wasn't his fault, to now losing Marlon in the same way. But instead of him surviving this, his life is now gone due to careless, reckless driving and an evil spirit that cared nothing about my son's life or even his own. Two innocent lives gone forever. And because of what? A stolen car? To show off for? To taunt the police? To say, I'm in a fast muscle car with tons of speed that the police won't even bother chasing because they can't catch him. And to make matters worse, when my son lost his life due to this foolishness at the hand of his friend, Khaleel, these two cars collided and it caused an explosion. And instead of Khaleel asking the neighbors to please go pull my friend out the car, he was just worried about his own life, asking the nearby neighbors and bystanders, get me out this car. But not once did he say, please, pull my friend out. My son was left in the passenger seat of this car to burn. My son burned in his car. He burned. And what did he tell the police? I never seen that car in my life. I was just walking down Cedar, minding my own business, and this car came flying into me. Which was so far from the truth. He didn't take any responsibility for what he did, and 2 innocent lives that he just snuffed away, all for his fulfillment and for the thrill. He showed zero remorse for taking my son away from us, for taking my son away from me, for taking him away from his twin brother, for taking him away from his siblings and family. Marlon was loved by so many people in his South Euclid Lyndhurst community. All of his friends, my neighbors, all of his old teachers and principals, his employers and employees. He didn't deserve to leave this life the way he did. Burned to death with nothing left of him but his charred earring. That's what the funeral home said to me that was left. I had to make funeral arrangements for my son, and still to this day, I don't know what was in his casket. I will never know. I didn't want to know. I just want to remember my son, how I saw him last when he brought my luggage to the car. My son was a very handsome young man with a beautiful smile and big dreams and a bright future. He often would have conversations with his brother, Marcellus, about moving to Houston once his brother became better dealing with his paralysis. But now these dreams are no more. My sons were not even able to make it to their 21st birthday together on this Saturday, December 2nd. They would have been 21 together. That part hurt me the most, Your Honor. He is not sorry for what he's done. If Khaleel would have not crashed after going 102 miles per hour with my son in the car, he would be still driving that stolen vehicle, still speeding at high rates, still out showing no concern for law enforcement or pedestrians. He would still be on the city streets, stealing more cars, disrupting people's lives. And causing chaos. He told one of their mutual friends that he doesn't need to apologize to me when asked, because he was not the driver of the car. Well, who was? He doesn't know. He doesn't have any he didn't take any responsibility for his actions. Oh my gosh. He hasn't taken any responsibility for his actions, and taking him away from us at such an early age. Marlon told Khaleel he could get him hired at his job with the city of Lyndhurst, but Khaleel didn't want to work. He just wanted to run the streets and make a career out of stealing these muscle cars. I don't think he understands the seriousness behind what he's done. My poor son's life is gone forever, and I can't have him back. But Khaleel can still have visits and can make calls, but I can never hear my son's voice. Nor touch him or hug him or hear his voice around my house. And just being my helper and the man of the house. He was my little protector, and he loved us. Was he perfect? By any means, no. He had his share of growing pains, as most young men do as they are transitioning from boys to men. But Marlon was he was a humble spirit who loved his twin brother, his family, and his life. He was a giver, and he was always willing to help a person in need. My heart is filled with grief every day behind this. So today, Your Honor, I ask that you consider us in having to deal with this devastating loss every day of our lives. I ask that you don't judge this case as oh gosh. I ask that you don't judge this case as business as usual. My son was a very special person to all of us who loved him, and he is missed and in our thoughts and heart every single day. I'm not sure if you have children, but please imagine if this was your son just being a passenger in his friend's, so-called friend's car, and they were driving over 3 times the legal limit for absolutely no cause at all. But your son's life was taken away because of this. Please consider this whole that please consider this whole this in my heart that will never be filled. Please consider the grief that I and his twin brother and siblings will have to deal with for the rest of our lives. He does not deserve a light sentence for this. My son was burned at that scene, and he just didn't deserve this. I didn't get a chance to see my son one last time. I seen him on Thursday, and he was gone on Saturday. I think God just put him in that place at that time for me to see him before I went out of town for a reason. But I just ask that you would just consider all of these things. I'm already dealing with so much. With my other son having paralysis, dealing with the same situation. Just get in the car with their friends. Both of them were working. Both of them were good kids. They just wasn't these type of kids. I didn't have these type of boys. I can't choose their friends for them, but, their friends can be responsible for their actions when they cause devastation like this. It's just not right. I couldn't have an open casket funeral for my son. I carry this with me every day and night. I just feel so horrible that I just wasn't here. I was out of town when I got the call about my son. I just wish I could have been here. I just feel like I could have changed something in his head, direction or something. I don't know, but I just ask that you would just consider these things. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
I'm Charity Nelson, Charity, Nelson, Nelson.
Yes, Ms. Nelson.
His actions on May 27, 2023 upended my life. His thoughtless actions took away my husband, my friend, my confidant, my provider. He destroyed our future. His decisions on that date changed the life of my entire family. Not only did I lose my husband, the children lost their father, Rose Nelson lost her son, and our grandchildren lost one of the best grandfathers that existed. He wasn't just victim 1 or victim 2. John Nelson was the light of my life. I waited my entire life for someone as special and kind and loving and caring and thoughtful as my husband. He took him away from me on that date. We didn't get to celebrate our wedding anniversary, and never again will I have a chance to dance with my husband or to hold his hand or to listen to him sing to me or make plans for our future. His sons won't hear his voice speaking positivity into them, instilling the virtues of our faith and encouraging them to be the best men they can be. They lost a father who provided discipline and love in equal amounts. My grandchildren won't get to sit on his lap or to hear his laugh or see him on the sidelines cheering them on. His actions stole that from them. It took months for me to try and to adjust to this crippling change in my life. My husband provided not only for me, but he did everything he could to assist our boys and to help his mother. That's what he was doing on that day. He was taking food to his mother. He was a proud United States Marine who served his country and continued to support other veterans, including those at the University Hospital where he organized their Veterans Day recognition program. My John was selfless, And after his regular shifts, he would sit with patients in the emergency room, providing comfort and ensuring that the people who looked like you and like me were treated fairly and with dignity. He cared about the well-being of others. His inconsiderate and thoughtless behavior took a great man off of God's earth. He deserves the harshest sentence possible. And I hope and pray that if he ever walks free again, that you think about your actions, because he's a murderer. My God.
Thank you, Ms. Sims.
Morning, Your Honor.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
All right, my name is Raymond Nelson. It's RaymonDNelson. That was my oldest brother. He served in the military. He was doing actions to help people in this community, help people gather in the community. But that gentleman over there, he was being very reckless, disrespectful to the community and everyone around him. And I don't think that's fair, because he had a pat on the hand to try to get his life together. But he decided to get worse. And I really don't want him to see daylight, myself. Because he has no morals or values of the impact that he did to people. But that's all I have to say right now.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Bremen?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Schleikett, mitigation for your time.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd ask that you hear some comments from Khaleel's mother, Your Honor.
Yes.
She'll approach, Your Honor, and
Yeah.
state her name for the record.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank
Could you
Your
come
Honor.
forward, please, and make sure you keep your voice up?
Good
What's
morning.
your name?
Cedar Johnson.
How do you spell your first name?
KHADYJRA.
And what would you like to say?
I just want to express my deepest condolences to Marlon and John's family. I know this is hard for them. I did not lose my son, but I lost my son. I have not seen him since he got arrested. And although I get to talk to him, it's not the same as him being there. He's my oldest of four. We have a big family here. He has a daughter. She just turned 1. She wasn't allowed in, but she's here. I just want to say that Marlon and Khaleel were best friends. Marlon shared his location with me as well. And when I got the news that my son was in the hospital, the first person I called was Marlon as well. They had that type of relationship, that type of friendship. Marlon was welcome in my home all the time. He was there the weekend this happened. He stayed before I moved into my new house and at my old house. I just want to extend my condolences to the family. My son did not intentionally mean to harm anyone. I think that we've talked a lot about this, and he is sorry for what happened. He does miss his friend. He has communicated that. And he was trying to get his life in order. Khaleel was working. He was to start a job with his grandfather that Monday on the 31st. So, and he worked with me prior to that. So he is a good kid. I'm a single mom, and he was always there to help me whenever I needed help with my kids. He's not a menace. None of this was intentional. And again, I just want to say I'm sorry to the family. I know nothing can bring Marlon or John back, but I hurt for you guys as well. And then I also want to say I love my son.
Thank you, Mr. Schleck. Thank you very much for speaking.
Judge, may it please the court for some brief mitigatory remarks regarding Khaleel. Your Honors, we do take exception to some of the comments by the government. This was certainly not, quote unquote, the worst form of the offense. Your Honor, the worst form of the offense of an aggravated vehicular homicide is where you and I are walking down the street with a group of people and some terrorist or somebody of that sort with bad malice just runs us over. Khaleel was not intoxicated, wasn't drunk, wasn't high on drugs. It's an F2, Your Honor, because he drove recklessly, which certainly was the facts here. There's no running away from it. He was reckless. He was driving at an excessive rate of speed. That's the definition of recklessness. The only reason it's an F2 is because his license was under suspension and he hadn't just taken the legal efforts to reinstate his driver's license. Otherwise, it wouldn't even be an F2. So, in terms of the worst form of the offense, Your Honor, it's actually a technical offense that makes it an elevated offense to an F2. Otherwise, as you well know, it would be much less of a serious offense. But that doesn't take away from the fact that he was reckless and he didn't have a license. And that is why he accepted responsibility. Your Honor, as you know, he's 20 years old. He's been in jail since May 30th. It's about 181 days ago. He's not here at the podium with me, Your Honor, because he sustained a broken ankle, a broken femur. He's got plates and screws, and he's permanently disabled, and he's unable to even walked with a walker if he can walk at all. He has no specific recollection of the accident. He only remembers that he was at his closest friend, who he considered literally like a brother, Marlon Emory, at the house. The last thing he recalls is leaving the house with Marlon. He believes, Your Honor, that Marlon drove from the house, but we don't know what happened. Marlon, of course, unfortunately, is not here to talk to us about it, and Khaleel has no independent recollection. He understands that the evidence demonstrates that he was helped out of the vehicle and that it appears that he was the driver. He always maintained that he wasn't the driver, but in recollection, it just doesn't come to him as to who was actually driving. But when we went over all the facts of the case, Your Honor, all the discovery that we received, Khaleel looked and said, you know what, I guess I was. And he accepted full responsibility. He didn't make all the people come back in here and have a trial, and he has accepted responsibility. To suggest he has no remorse or regards for the family is just factually inaccurate. Your Honor, at this point, what does he do except say, I'm sorry? There isn't anything else he can say. There's nothing else he can do. God knows if he could turn back the clock, he would do so. They were out irresponsibly driving around at a high rate of speed, and a tragedy happened. But it was an automobile accident that's only elevated to this level of a crime because it was under suspension. I think, Your Honor, if I may, if you consider all the factors of 29, 29, 11, 12, 13, and the factors of 14, he doesn't have a terrible record. Now, you may say to me, well, Jay, how bad could his record be? He's only 20 years old. He had a juvenile record. He did have the felony for the F4 and the M1 that he got a community control sanction on. The break-in here is 2 F5s and an M2. And then, of course, we're here on the 2 F2s, which carries with it additionally the collateral consequence of a Class 2 suspension of his driver's license if he ever gets one, which would be 3 to life. Your Honor, I would ask, this is very difficult. Those victim impact statements were incredibly compelling. And it would be impossible for you as an individual not to be impacted by those impact statements. But hopefully, Your Honor, as a judge, we have to be a little bit more dispassionate and consider all of the factors of 29, 29, 11, 12, and 13. I would submit to you most respectfully that the factors of 29, 29.14 are not applicable for consecutive sentences. Now, I understand, Your Honor, certainly very well that there are two victims in this case, and that you may say Khaleel needs to be punished for each one of the two victims, Mr. Nelson's family and Mr. Emory's family. I understand that. But he doesn't need maximum consecutive on what was a reckless automobile accident that's only here because of his not having a driver's license status. So, Your Honor, I would ask you most respectfully to, if you don't believe that concurrent sentences are appropriate, that you give him some mid-range sentence on the 2 to 8. And if you want to run those consecutive, well, then that's what this honorable court will do. I can't argue really too much. I'd ask that the probation violation be terminated, Your Honor, or that runs concurrent with his sentence, and certainly the 2 F5s and the M2, where his phone was at a scene where him and others took the car. So I'm going to ask Your Honor to give him a lower range than the maximum consecutive sentences. It would not demean the seriousness of the crime. It could adequately punish this offender, and it can ensure that this young man is rehabilitated through the Department of Rehabilitations and Corrections. And he's going to have a long time to think about what he did, Your Honor. It was never his intention to go out that day and hurt anybody. As you know, he could have just as easily killed himself. He got lucky. And it's a tragedy, and my heart goes out to the families as well. But we have to deal with what we have, Your Honor, and I'd ask you to consider all of the factors of the law and just not those victim impact statements, which were, I would say, extremely compelling and heartfelt. Thank you, Your Honor. Would you like to hear from Khaleel from the table, Your Honor, or would you prefer he comes to the podium?
Mr. Johnson can stay at the table with you.
Okay, thank you.
Can he remain seated, Your Honor?
Yes, he may.
It's difficult for him. Okay, thank you.
One moment, please. Mr. Johnson, this is your sentencing, so you have a right to speak to the court. Would you like to say anything, sir?
Yes, Your Honor. I want to say that I'm truly sorry for everything that happened, even though I don't have no recollection of what happened. And I want to give this sorry to the family, Emory family, and the Nelson family. And I want to give this special sorry to Marlon's mom and Marlon's brother, Marcellus and Sheree. And I want to just say I'm truly sorry, and I didn't mean for any to be that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson, do you recall telling people on the scene that you were just a pedestrian?
No, Your Honor.
You don't even remember that?
No, Your Honor.
But you agree that you would have said those things?
Possibility, Your Honor, yes.
Is there anything else you wish to say, sir?
No, Your Honor. I'm just truly sorry.
Mr. Johnson, at the time of your plea, we went over the indefinite sentence, as well as the fact that these two aggravated vehicular homicides were mandatory sentences. In front of you is the Reagan-Tokes form that you signed before, and I'll go through these 5 paragraphs with you. This is your notification regarding the indefinite sentence before I state that indefinite sentence. I'll go through this with you. At the top, by the way, is a short paragraph about your notification that pursuant to 2929.19B2C, you are eligible for earned reduction of 5 to 15% of the minimum prison term imposed for exceptional conduct while incarcerated or adjustment to incarceration regarding your non-mandatory time periods. As to your Reagan-Tokes indefinite sentencing, I'll advise you again, as it says in paragraph 1, that it is rebuttably presumed that the offender will be released from the service of the sentence on the expiration of the minimum prison term imposed as part of the sentence or on the offender's presumptive earned early release date as defined in section 2967.271 of the revised code, whichever is earlier. You do see that and you do understand that, sir?
Yes, Your Honor.
Paragraph 2, that the Department of Rehabilitation and Correction may rebut the presumption described in Division B2C1 of this section if at a hearing held under section 2967.271 of the revised code, the Department makes specified determinations regarding the offender's conduct while confined, the offender's rehabilitation, the offender's threat to society, the offender's restrictive housing, if any, while confined, and the offender's security classification. You do see that and understand that as well?
Yes, Your Honor.
Paragraph 3, that if as described in Division B2C2 of this section, the Department at the hearing makes the specified determinations and rebuts the presumption, the Department may maintain the offender's incarceration after the expiration of that minimum term or after the presumptive earned early release date for the length of time the Department determines to be reasonable, subject to the limitations specified in section 2967.271 of the revised code. You read that, and do you understand it?
Yes, Your Honor.
Paragraph 4, that the Department may make the specified determinations and maintain the offender's incarceration during the provisions described in Division B2C1 and 2 of this section more than one time, subject to the limitations specified in section 2967.271 of the revised code. Do you see that and understand that as well?
Yes, Your Honor.
Paragraph 5, that if the offender has not been released prior to the expiration of the offender's maximum prison term imposed as part of the sentence, the offender must be released upon the expiration of that term. Do you understand that as well, sir?
Yes, Your Honor.
Next to your signature and the date that you have, or at the time of your plea, you'll be putting in today's date, which is 11/27 of 2023. Okay, that's for you, Mr. Johnson, to fill out. Do you understand?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. So if you could borrow a pen, would you need one, or
Yes.
you borrow one from Mr. Schlackett, or you can have mine. Next to that date will be 11/27/23. It'll be made part of the court file. Again, the court finds that the defendant understands the instructions of the court, including the mandatory sentence and the indefinite sentencing scheme, as well as any reduction of his sentence. Prior to coming to the bench, I did have the opportunity to review the entire case file. I reviewed the pre-sentence investigation report. In that pre-sentence investigation report, it does list your prior criminal history. adjudicated delinquent on December 13th, 2019, placed on 6 months of community control in case 1911156. Disorderly conduct and riot. On that same date, in case 191116465, also placed on community control. That was the breaking and entering and vandalism and possession of criminal tools, initial charges. Also, in case 191112291, on the same date, you're adjudicated delinquent and placed on 6 months of community control. This being for the disorderly conduct, criminal trespass, riot, failure to disperse. As an adult, in case number CR 22668827, you pled guilty to burglary, a felony in the 4th degree, and assault, a misdemeanor of the 1st degree. You were given community control sanctions by this court. You violated your community control on 12/15/2022. A capias was issued on April 4th/2023. You were in custody on May 31st/2023. And then comes these 2 cases, case 684127, where you pled guilty to breaking and entering, attempted grand theft, both felonies of the 5th degree, and criminal damaging misdemeanor of the 2nd degree, as well as CR 23681-665, where here you're in front of the court on the aggravated vehicular homicide charges that you pled guilty to. There was no statement given by you at the time of the probation violation. You have almost all medium risk scores, as well as a high for education, employment, and finance. Courts reviewed the attached victim impact statements. I've heard from the victims' families and from the assistant prosecuting attorney. I have reviewed 2929.12 for the principles and purposes of sentencing. I have also reviewed 2929.12 for the seriousness and recidivism factors. And 2929.13 and other revised code sections for felony sentencing. And 2929.21 for misdemeanor sentencing. The court has formulated the following decision based upon the overriding principles and purposes of felony sentencing in 2929.11, which are to protect the public from future crime by the defendant or others and to punish the offender using the minimum sanctions that the court determines accomplishes those purposes without imposing an unnecessary burden on state or local government resources. To achieve these purposes, the court has considered the need for incapacitation, deterrence, rehabilitation, and providing for restitution. And I have considered all of the relevant sentencing guidelines provided in, again, revised codes 2929.12, 2929.11, 2929.13, as well as 2929.19, and all sentencing guidelines and statutes. In case number CR 23684-127, this is for breaking and entering, felony of the 5th degree. You will receive a 1-year sentence. For the count number 2, attempted grand theft, felony of the 5th degree, you will receive a 1-year sentence. For criminal damaging, count number 3, this is the misdemeanor of the 2nd degree, you'll receive 90 days. That 90 days must be run concurrent by law to the underlying breaking and entering and attempted grand theft. In case CR 23-681-665, for the aggravated vehicular homicide, you'll receive a sentence of 7 years on count number 3. For the aggravated vehicular homicide, count number 4, you will also receive a 7-year sentence. Court finds you to be a probation violator. In case 668827. For that burglary felony of the 4th degree, you will receive a 1-year sentence. For the assault misdemeanor of the 1st degree, a 90-day sentence. By law, that misdemeanor must be run concurrent to the burglary charge. Case number 684127. For that 1-year sentence, that will be run concurrently. Case number 681665 and 684127 will be run consecutively to each other. The 2 counts will also be run consecutive to each other. The total sentence here is a 15 to 18.5 year sentence. Court finds count number 3 to be the qualifying felony of the 2nd degree. 50% or 1/2 of 7 is 3.5 years. So 7 plus 7 is 14 plus the 1 year consecutive in case 684127 makes it 15 to 18.5. You're to serve a minimum prison term of 15 years with an indefinite prison term of 18.5 years. 3.5 years for a maximum prison term of 18.5 years. Total stated prison term being 15 to 18.5 again. As to the consecutive findings under 2929.14 C4A, they impose these terms consecutively to each other. That is the 2 felonies of the 2nd degree, as well as case number 684127. Finding that the consecutive sentences are necessary to protect the public from future crime or to punish the defendant, that the consecutive sentences are not disproportionate to the seriousness of the defendant's conduct and to the danger the defendant poses to the public, and that the defendant committed 1 or more of the multiple offenses while the defendant was awaiting trial or sentencing or was under a community control or was under post-release control for a prior offense. Again, the defendant having been on community control at the time that he did this with a violation in the caveus 684127. The court also finds under 2929.14 C4B consecutive sentences to be appropriate as the court imposes these terms consecutively, finding that the consecutive service is necessary to protect the public from future crime or to punish the defendant, that the consecutive sentences are not disproportionate to the seriousness of the defendant's conduct and to the danger the defendant poses to the public, and that at least 2 of the multiple offenses were committed in this case as part of 1 or more courses of conduct, that the harm caused by said multiple offenses was so great or unusual that no single prison term for any of the offenses committed as part of any of the courses of conduct adequately reflects the seriousness of the defendant's conduct. The defendant, having committed a theft offense, stealing this car as well as stealing a car in 684127, I agree with the assessments by the state and by the victims' families who have spoken to the court here. You were under a habit of stealing cars, clearly driving them recklessly and at very excessive speeds. The court imposes prison terms consecutively under 2929.14C4C as well, finding that the consecutive service is necessary to protect the public from future crime or to punish the defendant, that the consecutive sentences are not disproportionate to the seriousness of the defendant's conduct and to the danger defendant poses to the public, and that the defendant's history of criminal conduct demonstrates that the consecutive sentences are necessary to protect the public from future crime by the defendant. This is not business as usual. The amount of grief here is astronomical by all parties, by your family, sir, as well as the two families on the other side of the room. I can't imagine having to deal with these losses daily and your reckless disregard for others. You say this person was like a brother to you, like a friend. It's hard to say, and I certainly don't think that either of these two losses were worse than the other. All three families here are devastated. I'm also taking into account the mitigation that you've provided in not sentencing consecutively on all counts, on all three cases. And running one of those cases concurrently. I find you do have a level of some remorse here, sir. I'm not sure you don't understand everything here that occurred. And you are 19 years of age. Or were at the time. There is a Class 2 suspension of your license for life, sir. I don't believe that that's just a technical issue. You were driving under suspension, and you showed no regard for the law in attempting to have a license or be regulated in any way. As we discussed, your aggravated vehicular homicide counts are mandatory sentences. Once you are released from your service in prison, there is a post-release control period. Mr. Bringman, for these offenses here, felonies of the second degree, this is a mandatory term of 3 years, is that correct? Or because of a homicide, did we not, we discussed this before, that these are 5 years?
Yes, Your Honor.
One more. These are Mr. Brayman, could you look that up carefully again?
Yes.
For the court? On your felony of the fourth degree burglary charge, adult parole authority may supervise you for a period of 2 years at the discretion of the parole board. The same goes for your breaking and entering charge, felony of the fifth degree, and attempted grand theft felony of the fifth degree. These other charges, aggravated vehicular homicide, are felonies in the second degree. Mr. Bringman?
Your Honor, it's 18 months and 3 years. For the second degree felony.
Yes. Mandatory minimum of 18 months up to a maximum of 3 years. All right, thank you. The court has looked up the statute as well on that. If you violate any post-release control rule or condition, you may be subjected to a more restrictive rule or condition, a longer duration under supervision, or you could be sent back to prison even though you have done all the time to which you have been sentenced. You could get up to 9 months in prison for each rule violation. The total, however, for all rule violations cannot be any more than 1/2 of the prison sentence that you receive unless the rule violation is for the commission of a new felony, in which case you could receive a prison term of the greater of 1 year or the time remaining on post-release control, in addition to any time that you receive for the new felony. The post-release control prison term must be served consecutively to any prison term that you receive for the new felony. Mr. Schlackett, you believe that there's 181 days of credit for time served, is that correct?
Yes,
sir?
Your Honor, the docket reflects that he was arrested on May 30th.
Okay. Do you have a motion as to indigency, sir?
He's indigent for any purposes, Your Honor, with respect to fines and costs.
Court costs and fines will be waived due to the defendant's indigency. You will receive credit for time served for 181 days. Anything further from the state?
Thank you.
Mr. Schlackett, anything
No,
further?
thank you, Your Honor.
All right. The sheriff to deliver him.